What is up, everyone? It's Quinn here, and in today's video, I'm going to be going through a Dynasty rookie mock draft, and for the landing spots and draft capital, I'm going to be using Mel Kiper's most recent mock draft. This was a two-rounder. I think some really interesting draft capital at the quarterback position that maybe people would be surprised about, some fun landing spots at some of the other positions, so that's what I'm going to be focusing on here, just going through how I would approach this draft in this specific mock, and I'm just going to run through all the landing spots here. It's going to be up on the screen throughout the whole thing, but just quickly running through. So 101, we had Cam Ward to the Titans. With the second pick, we had Travis Hunter to the Browns. The sixth pick in the first round, we had Jeanty to the Raiders. We had Sanders to the Saints at the 109, Warren to the Bears at the 110, Hampton to the Cowboys at the 112, Loveland to the Colts at pick 14, Golden to the Cardinals, first wide receiver off the board at pick 16, McMillan to the Broncos at pick 20, Jaxson Dart was the last first rounder here, going to the Rams at pick 26. Then we had two early second round quarterbacks with Shough going to the Browns and then Milroe going to the Giants. We had some early wide receivers with Egbuka to the Jaguars, Burden to the Patriots. We had TreVeyon Henderson go to the Bears, Elijah Arroyo go to the Jets, Judkins to the Broncos, Higgins to the Seahawks, back to the Packers, Mason Taylor to the Chargers, Bond to the Panthers, Noel to the Texans, and then closing it out with Kaleb Johnson to the Chiefs. So now let's dive into how I would approach this here. And starting off with the 101, this is going to be a shoo-in. It's Ashton Jeanty. He goes with the 6th overall pick to the Raiders. He's getting that draft capital. He's going to be lined up to be a workhorse from day one. Not going to spend too much time on this one. Ashton Jeanty locking in that pick. Now, the 102, this might be a little bit surprising. I'm actually going to go with Travis Hunter, and I do think I'm going to be a lot higher on Travis Hunter, especially if this is the landing spot, because the whole issue with Hunter has been, how do you balance the risk of him potentially going and playing defense? And I think that's, a reasonable thing to be worried about, right? If he's primarily on defense and he's like a third wide receiver playing 50% of the snaps, he's likely not going to pay off for fantasy. But with this specific landing spot, we have kind of already gone into the mind of their GM, Andrew Berry, and he called him a unicorn, said he can play both sides of the ball at a very high level, but he also said that they view him primarily as a wide receiver. And so with this landing spot, I do think his number one position is going to be wide receiver. And if there was a version of Travis Hunter who never played defense, like this wasn't a concern, I do think he would be neck and neck with Ashton Jeanty for the 101 in this class. So I still think there's a tier break because of that defense factor, but I will go with Travis Hunter here at the 102. Now, if I was actually in a draft and I could trade back, assuming that other people aren't going to be this high, I probably would, but my best player available in this spot would be Travis Hunter, so that's who I'll go with. Then at the 103, I'm going to go with Omarion Hampton. I mean, this is really, really strong draft capital and a very strong landing spot. 12th overall pick to the Dallas Cowboys. Has the workhorse size, workhorse skill set. He's now going to a team that is clearly very high on him. Very limited competition. They brought in Javonte Williams in free agency. So I think he's going to be the workhorse pretty much from day one. And with the 3rd overall pick in the rookie draft, I think that makes a lot of sense. Then my 104, I'm actually also going to be going with another running back. And this is where I have TreVeyon Henderson. Now, he did not get the same, type of draft capital as Hampton. 12th overall for Hampton. TreVeyon Henderson was the 41st pick. So kind of like that early to mid second round area, but he gets a really strong landing spot with the Bears. And I'm also just a big fan of TreVeyon Henderson and his skill set. With the Bears drafting him here, we definitely might be seeing a repeat of 2023 where the Lions went out, they drafted Jahmyr Gibbs, they end up trading DeAndre Swift, moving on from him. You have Ben Johnson coming in. They're now potentially drafting their RB1 of the future. Could they also move on from DeAndre Swift or kind of just be like done with him and move him as like the RB2, a depth option? I don't think that TreVeyon Henderson is Jahmyr Gibbs. I know I've seen that comp out there, but I think a Jahmyr Gibbs type of role would be the perfect role for a guy like TreVeyon Henderson. He's not going to be like this huge workhorse back, but you maximize his receiving upside, his big playability. I just have a lot of confidence that Ben Johnson can do that. Within this offense, with a lot of stud weapons, they're going to draft another one here in the top 10 picks. I think Henderson at the 104 is a very, very fun spot. Then at the 105, I have the number 1 overall pick in Cam Ward, and I can definitely see the argument for him being ranked higher. I mean, he's the 1st overall pick in the NFL draft. He's going to have every opportunity to be the franchise guy here for the Titans. But what I keep coming back to is just like his quality of prospect And then the fact that last year, right, in a very strong quarterback class, he would have been in like the J.J. McCarthy, Michael Penix, Bo Nix bucket. And McCarthy is really the name that I keep focusing in on here because I think if McCarthy was in this year's class, he could have a strong case to be the 101, get drafted ahead of Cam Ward. And so McCarthy's not going to have that number 1 overall pick attached to him, but he is just in a significantly better situation here with the Vikings with Kevin O'Connell at head coach. You have Jefferson, you have Addison, you have Hawkinson. And so it's like, if you were trying to trade away J.J. McCarthy, I don't think you're going to be able to trade him for the 102, the 103. And if these guys were pretty equal as prospects, one guy has slightly worse draft capital, but still looks like the quarterback of the future, in a significantly better situation. I just have a tough time like reaching with the 102, 103 to draft a guy like Cam Ward, especially because I don't think he comes with a ton of fantasy upside, right? Like he doesn't have a ton of rushing upside. So those are my concerns with Cam Ward. I don't think he's a slam dunk prospect. Being the first overall pick is awesome, but just compared to some of the other quarterbacks in the dynasty landscape, I'm probably going to be a little bit lower on him than consensus. Now at the 106, I'm going to go with Tet McMillan. I really like the landing spot here to the Broncos. He's not the first wide receiver off the board, but I don't really think that matters a ton. He's going to be paired with Bo Nix, Sean Payton. He was my wide receiver 2 pre-draft. Like right now, he's my wide receiver 2 behind Travis Hunter. And this is where he would slot in if, this pick 20 to the Broncos came to fruition. I think it's kind of fun because he won't have to step in and be the clear-cut wide receiver 1 right away. That could be Courtland Sutton, but Sutton's getting up there in age. I think in the short term, McMillan can really kind of mix around, maybe play some big slot here in this Broncos offense. And then when the time is right, kind of break out and really establish himself as the wide receiver 1 of this offense. And then after McMillan, I'm going to be going with Quinshon Judkins, actually going to the same landing spot here with the Broncos. Now, personally, I am not the biggest Quinshon Judkins guy, but this is such a great landing spot. This is a very, very weak running back room. They've got Audric Estime and Jaleel McLaughlin as their current running back 1 and running back 2. And so I just think Judkins is going to be lined up for clear running back 1 usage like right away as early as week 1 of the season. And I think if he just goes out week 1, gets that really strong workload, regardless if he produces on it or not, I think he's going to be viewed as a top 10 dynasty running back. And so even if I'm not like a huge fan of him as a prospect, I could still draft him, and I think I could flip him and be very happy with what I get back, just because I think people are going to be high on him, and this is just objectively a very strong landing spot. Now, after Judkins, we're going to go with our first tight end here, and at the 108, I'm going to be selecting Tyler Warren. So he goes pick 10 to the Bears. I think a very interesting landing spot. He's stepping into a stacked offense that already has DJ Moore, Rome Odunze. They draft TreVeyon Henderson. You also have Cole Kmet there. And with this draft, this mock from Mel Kiper, it does kind of seem like this is a changing of the guard for the Bears where, they paid DeAndre Swift last year. Now you're bringing in Henderson. Believe they extended Cole Kmet, I think, heading into last year. And so now you're potentially having a changing of the guard at tight end. And even though they did extend him, I do want to point out that Cole Kmet can get cut after this season for only like $3.2 million in dead cap. And I also don't think he is just like an awful contract. So I also wouldn't rule out him being traded if they just want to, roll with Warren here. But I think in the short term, maybe it's kind of congested if they're sticking with Cole Kmet. Maybe, they're splitting time. You have some other wide receivers in the mix. But I just think long-term, this is looking like a great situation with Caleb Williams at quarterback, Ben Johnson as your head coach. You look at Sam Laporta, who came in, was the tight end 3 in points per game as a rookie. So we know that Ben Johnson can get these tight ends to produce. This isn't a landing spot I've seen mocked a ton for Tyler Warren, but I certainly would be interested in it. Now at the 109, I'm going to go with Emeka Egbuka. He goes early second round to the Jaguars, and I don't love the fact that he's slipping into round 2, but I think this is one of the best landing spots he possibly could have gotten here. He's pretty much going to be stepping into the Chris Godwin role in this Liam Cohen offense. I think he is an extremely high floor prospect. I could see him come in and be a solid fantasy wide receiver 2, like right away, playing behind Brian Thomas Jr. I just think this is a great situation. I think he fits so well in this offense with what Liam Cohen wants. And so if this happened, I would be very, very high on Egbuka in my rookie drafts. Then at the 110, I have Colston Loveland. Now he kind of gets the sketchy tight end landing spot where it does seem like the Colts are going to be very in on tight end, but it's certainly not a super sexy landing spot. I agree that I don't think it's a good landing spot. Like, I'm not going to try to pitch this as some sort of like amazing thing for Colston Loveland, but I think we can't like overreact too much to it. Remember, like last year, Brock Bowers, generational prospect, people were getting sketched out that he's going to the Raiders. Now, a year later, he's a locked in round one startup pick. So I believe in the talent of Colston Loveland, and situation can change pretty quickly, right? Like if Richardson's not the guy this next year, they could be on to a much better situation at quarterback heading into 2026. I also just think he's going to be able to come in and have a solid role right away. This is a team that has just been barren at the tight end position. They do have some interesting wide receivers. I really like Josh Downs. We'll see how Pittman looks if he can get healthy. Alec Pierce is like a field stretcher, but I would not be shocked if Colston Loveland was like closing the season as the number 2 target earner. So maybe year one, you're not super excited, but long term, I still think this is a fine spot here for Loveland. Now with the 111, I am going to go with Luther Burden. Now he does go round 2, which I don't love, but I do think this is a pretty fun landing spot here with the Patriots. He's going to be paired with a young up-and-coming quarterback in Drake May. He's a player that I do think kind of needs the coaching staff to really maximize his skill set. And that's why I'd really like to see him go in round 1. Because if he's going like back end round 1 to a really good team, probably stepping into a good situation with a competent coaching staff, if they're spending that round 1 draft capital on him, they probably really want to integrate him into the offense, know how to use them. If you're slipping into the second to some of the more underwhelming teams, it can get a little bit sketchy. He's kind of unproven working down the field, didn't run a full route tree in college, but underneath, the screen game, quick passes, he is absolutely electric. So you look at this Patriots wide receiver room, and, they signed Stephon Diggs, but we have no idea what Diggs is going to look like, right? Coming off the ACL as an aging wide receiver. I do think this is a situation where the offense could run through Luther Burden. And if you're a young wide receiver kind of trying to develop your route tree, there are certainly worse teammates you could have than a guy like Stephon Diggs here. At the 112, going to go with Shedeur Sanders. Now, this is kind of a gross landing spot. The draft capital's top 10, but going to the Saints here with the 9th overall pick, you're probably sitting behind Derek Carr, at least to start off the season. You've got a pretty underwhelming supporting cast. The future just doesn't look super bright for New Orleans, but this is still, a top 10 pick. I do think it's kind of an uninspiring landing spot. Not a quarterback who I think has a ton of fantasy upside just based on like the lack of overall tools. He's not dominant in one specific area. I don't think he's going to go out there and be this insane pocket passer. The rushing production is probably going to be pretty limited. So I'd say this is kind of towards the negative end of some of the potential landing spots, but still someone who I think is going to be in like that 1-2 turn area if it does play out this way. At the 201, I'm going to be going with Kaleb Johnson. Pretty interesting landing spot to the Chiefs here in the back end of the second. I'm not a huge Kaleb Johnson guy, but I do think you have to point out like going round 2 is nice. And going to the Chiefs, it does seem like there's some upside there. This is a pretty wide open Chiefs running back room. You have Pacheco, Hunt. They signed Elijah Mitchell in free agency. Carson Steele, the rookie from last year, but he has a great opportunity to be the week 1 starter. It really is a tale as old as time when you look at these running backs where teams hit on them as like day 3 picks, potentially undrafted. They break out, play well, and it doesn't matter. The team is still willing to replace them, right? For a guy like Elijah Pacheco, was playing well, obviously dealt with the injury this year, but seems like he's already getting replaced, at least in this mock draft. And so Kaleb Johnson, not someone who's really shown that he can be a 3-down back, didn't really flash much receiving upside in college, but an early down guy for the Chiefs, someone who's going to hit in the touchdown department. I will say, I don't think it's the perfect landing spot, right? Like people went head over heels for Clyde Edwards-Helaire. You still have to be a good player to pan out. It's not like, you're just walking into instant running back 1 production, but I do think this is an overall plus landing spot here for Kaleb Johnson, even if I'm not, his biggest fan. Then at the 202, I'm going to be going to the quarterback position, and I'm actually going to go with Jalen Milroe here. So he goes with the 2nd pick in the 2nd round. This is really strong draft capital for Jalen Milroe, and I'm not someone who thinks that Milroe is some sort of like slam dunk, super safe prospect. He definitely is not. There's a strong chance that he just never pans out as an NFL quarterback, but I think I just have to be in on him here with this type of investment in the draft capital. The potential rushing upside. He's likely going to have the opportunity to sit behind Russell Wilson, Jameis Winston. I mean, what's a better situation than your young quarterback sitting behind Jameis Winston? But, in all seriousness, I like Brian Dable. They have Malik Neighbors there as a building block. I just think you have to take a shot here, right? It's a high risk, high reward pick. It's definitely possible he does not pan out and just doesn't look good as an NFL quarterback. But with the physical tools, the rushing upside, it's tough to not see like the Jalen Hurts position in this, where like Jalen Hurts believe he went somewhere in round 2. People aren't thinking he's going to come in and be a solid NFL quarterback. But if he hits like a Hurts and you have that rushing upside, you're looking at someone who has like round 1 dynasty startup potential. And just compared to some of the other guys in this range, I don't think they have that same ceiling. So I'll just have to be in on Jalen Milroe, even if it seems a little bit sketchy. Then at the 203, going to be going with Matthew Golden. This does seem kind of low considering the fact that he was the first wide receiver off the board at pick 16. But I really just dislike this landing spot going to the Cardinals here. And I think like production-wise, Matthew Golden is a very flawed like wide receiver 1. I wouldn't take him there. You can explain away some of the issues in college, but like never having that true dominant season, even when you're playing 3 full years, not great. And now he's going to be going to a landing spot where they just extended their target hog tight end. You have an elite wide receiver prospect and Marvin Harrison Jr. going into a second season. And I just really struggle to see the upside here with this landing spot. Like, I think you're just asking a lot from both Matthew Golden and Kyler Murray to all of a sudden be supporting like 3 stud weapons. And you need to be like an insanely talented wide receiver to be able to, get that type of usage with this quality of competition, in the offense. So I think from a real life NFL perspective, this definitely could make sense for the Cardinals, but for fantasy, it's not something I'm super in on. And, maybe I'd be more willing to draft him higher if I was higher on him as a prospect just from the jump, but I wouldn't say I'm like way above consensus on him. And so the landing spot, kind of scary to me. After Golden at the 204, I'm going to be going with Jaxson Dart. And this is pretty much like the Jordan Love situation here with the Rams. He goes 26 to Los Angeles, and this is a great development opportunity. I mean, sitting behind Matthew Stafford, Sean McVay as the head coach, I think there could be some serious issues if Jaxson Dart goes to a team that needs him to start on week 1. And so he's going to have every opportunity to learn behind Stafford with Sean McVay. And if we're like trying to maximize his potential at the NFL level, this is probably the best situation for him. The issue is just like fantasy-wise, for Dynasty, for his value, you're not going to be getting any returns for probably at least a couple years, right? Stafford could play 1, 2, 3 more seasons. And not only are you not getting any returns because he's not playing, he's playing as a backup, but you also just have no idea what he is, right? So he could sit for a few years and they might decide like, we just don't think he's the guy. We're going to find another quarterback. He could end up getting the opportunity and just not be good. So the fact that he's probably just going to be sitting, kind of rotting on your roster for a couple of years, that's not an ideal situation. But if you're a rebuilding team, you're picking him here in the early second, it's possible, he's on your bench developing behind Stafford, and then he's able to step in and just be a very solid NFL quarterback. That's certainly in the range of outcomes here. So interesting spot to the Rams. It does seem like he's pretty much a lock here to go in round 1. I believe he's like minus 1,000 to go in the first. So this is certainly a very possible landing spot for him. Now at the 205, going to be going to the tight end position, and I have Mason Taylor with pick 55 to the Chargers. I think the Chargers are like the clear number 1 tight end landing spot, and Mason Taylor does pass the athleticism hurdle. He had an 8.88 relative athletic score. I think he's going to have a great opportunity to play and produce in year 1. Obviously, you still need to be a good enough player to maximize the situation, but we have seen Herbert give just like these random tight end solid stat lines. Like Stone Smart had a couple of good games in there. Will Dissly was like playable just out of nowhere because he was paired with Justin Herbert. It's still a very weak wide receiver room outside of Ladd McConkey. So this would be a great opportunity for Mason Taylor and getting that round 2 draft capital. And then at the 206, we have probably the biggest wild card of this mock with Tyler Shough going with the first pick in the second round. Now, he just seems like someone who's consistently not getting lumped into like that second tier of quarterback. Like you see like the Quinn Ewers kind of getting talked about way more than Tyler Shough, but it does seem like the NFL is very interested in him. And this is just a very unique situation. He's a very old prospect. He's like 25 and a half years old. Like you had Michael Penix last year, who was a pretty old prospect, but Shough is going to be like a year and a half older on draft day than Penix was last year. To put into perspective how old he is, he was like a backup quarterback option at Oregon when Justin Herbert was in his second to last collegiate season. So Herbert played his junior year, than his senior year, than has been in the NFL for a decent amount of time. Tyler Shough has been in college that entire time, but I don't think we can ignore this draft capital and the opportunity he's going to have here with the Browns. This is an offense that has solid weapons: Jerry Jeudy, David Njoku. Now you're adding Travis Hunter in this draft. And you look at the current quarterbacks, you have Watson coming off, I think, an Achilles tear, who was already washed, and then Kenny Pickett. So, like, maybe he sits behind Pickett. They want to develop him, but if they think he's good enough to start right away, he's going to have the opportunity to be the week one starter in an interesting, situation here offensively with some nice weapons. And so whatever you think of him as a player, as a prospect, if he's going early round 2, he's going to have to probably at the very least be like a mid-second round rookie pick. Now, as we move forward, I do just want to point out that this is the range, even maybe a couple picks before this, where I would really probably prefer the running backs going in round 3, right? Like, we didn't get a Cam Scatterbo landing spot. If we're getting like Giddens, Sampson, like these other running backs, Devin Neal, guys like that, who are potentially going round 3, even like somewhere in round 4, I would start to consider these running backs. But since this is, a 2-round mock draft, we're only going with the players that were drafted. And with the 207, I'm going to go with Jalen Noel. He goes late second round to the Texans. I think long term, this is a very interesting landing spot attached to CJ Stroud. I think in year 1, he kind of has a redundant skill set to Christian Kirk, but he's got 1 year left on his deal. This is not like a long-term issue for him, but this is solid draft capital and could end up being the Texans, wide receiver 2 moving forward behind Nico Collins. At my 208, I have Jayden Higgins. He goes with the 52nd pick to the Seahawks. I like Jayden Higgins. I think of like this second like wide receiver tier once you're getting past like Luther Burden, Matthew Golden. He's probably my favorite after those guys. I really dislike this landing spot, and I'm not saying that Jayden Higgins has to be a big slot, but I would at least like the option for them to be able to kick him inside, and that's just not going to happen here with the Seahawks, right? You have JSN and Cooper Kupp, both guys who probably should be playing in the slot. I actually think this is kind of a similar situation to Keon Coleman last year, where just like Higgins, you at least like the opportunity for him to play a big slot, if it doesn't work out outside, and he went to a team that pretty much had like all slot pass catchers with Khalil Shakir, Curtis Samuel. You could argue like Dalton Kincaid should be playing in the slot. So that's my concern for Jayden Higgins, but still getting the round 2 draft capital. And then you're just hoping, he's able to win and separate on the outside. Then I have Elijah Arroyo going here in like the early to mid-second to the Jets. Now, this is fantastic draft capital for Elijah Arroyo. It's kind of a gross landing spot, but he's probably going to step in and be the Jets tight end 1 right away. The no athletic testing really kind of sketches me out because we do know how important that is at the tight end position. But I think he would have tested fine. I didn't think, he'd be someone who would tank it. It is just tough if you don't have the actual numbers, but really strong draft capital here to the Jets. Like I said, great draft capital, bad landing spot, but going to have the opportunity to play right away. And then we have a couple wide receivers here. These last like 4 or 5 picks, I'm not really set in stone on these guys, but Isaiah Bond, I have him here as my 210. Going late round 2 to the Panthers. I can see the way this works out for Bond. He was an electric player at Texas, especially early on in the season before the ankle injuries. He was the wide receiver 2 at Alabama as a true sophomore. This is a very wide open wide receiver room with Adam Thielen. Jalen Coker's fun, Xavier Leggett, kind of a disappointing year 1. But like if he comes in and impresses in this Dave Canales offense, which was really peaking towards the end of the season, I think he's going to have the opportunity to play a pretty solid role. And then the last guy here, Jack Besh, goes with the 54th pick to the Packers. This is kind of a weird landing spot. It's just such a crowded wide receiver room. You've got Jayden Reed, Romeo Doubs, Dontavian Wicks. You have Christian Watson, who's dealing with that blown out knee. It does kind of feel like the Packers need someone to lead this wide receiver room as like a true alpha wide receiver, not necessarily another rotation guy. It's also possible I'm still like holding out hope for Dontavian Wicks because he is so good at separating. The dude just has really struggled to catch the ball. And so maybe this is a pick where the Packers are saying like, we're kind of done with Dontavian Wicks. We don't know about Romeo Doubs long-term, and like we want Jack Besh to be a solid starting wide receiver. That is certainly possible. Like they might be lower on their current wide receiver room than I am, but it does just seem kind of crowded, and I don't know if he's really going to come in here and like separate from the bunch. So that's going to wrap it up for this mock draft here. I think a lot of fun landing spots. Quarterback position becoming very interesting because it's not a great class on paper, but like We're getting a first overall quarterback. We're probably going to get another top 10 guy in Shedeur Sanders. You have Jackson Dart getting a lot of round 1 hype. And then if you have guys like Milroe and Shough who are potentially going early round 2, like, the depth is honestly looking kind of interesting just in terms of the draft capital. But that's all I've got for you guys today. Let me know your thoughts. Do you agree, disagree with these picks? Who should be higher? Who should be lower? Let me hear it. Thank you again, and I will see you in the next one.